thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully I'll be able to show you stuff in practice. So you'll notice that this PowerPoint presentation is fully exposed. Everything on my desktop will be exposed because I will just go through and demo things live. So a little bit of a background is animation and visual effects is usually thought of in the linear sense of movies, TV and so forth. And it's quite dominant. So you'll actually notice that these little sections here in the blue are the box office of, I've got the latest 3 years, but let's just go 2007 to 2015. This is how visual effects is used in feature films. The blue boxes are those that need visual effects. The orange boxes are those that are pure animation. So this is how much you'll see. So with regards to what animation and visual effects is about, it's all part of the creative industries. So new modes of communication, new technologies and so forth. And I think that what's great about the Imagine series or the We Imagine is that everyone's starting to think about this. They're actually starting to future-proof and go, well, hold on, what exciting, engaging ways and immersive ways can we involve people? So I thought it might be a little bit of a fun to do a case study because the VR, AR, mixed reality expectations are pretty high right now. I thought I could probably show a quick history that might interest you. So let's go back to the history of our two eyeballs. And in the Victorian era, 3D was considered the business, like it was the television of its era. So this is actually an example of a slide that when you put together, you can actually see that there's a difference. So prior to photography, television and so forth, and the mainstream sort of media of the 100 years, it's really interesting to note where we're coming from here. So all these names of a bioscope, a correctoscope, or whatever, just put a scope at the end of it. This was different ways of trying to look at pictures and look at images. And the first 3D film was actually in 1861, which is kind of like predating cinema on a sort of cylinder that goes around. I won't go into history, but let's just bear this in mind because 3Ds come in waves. So it was huge before the advent of cinema. Then in the mid-50s, it was huge in cinema. 2010, 3D TVs came out because of Avatar. Avatar was released in 2009. The next year at CES, all these 3D TVs were out. As of last year, 2017, you can no longer buy a 3D television. So that's really interesting that you cannot go in town and actually buy one anymore. So what I'm trying to do here is talk about, well, how do we stop this from happening to AR and VR and mixed realities? What can we do if we invest heavily in this to actually make sure that there are successful outcomes? And I'm going to just gloss through a lot of this rather than actually talk through details. The problem is that we don't actually have any equipment to film 3D. Truthfully, the university does. We actually have this camera here, the Panasonic one. But if you were to go in town and actually buy a camera, you can't. That's the big problem. So if anyone did buy a 3D TV, how do you actually get 3D material? Really difficult to do. So I think that what's key is that you've got to be able to produce the content. So I'm hoping that this discussion and what the We Imagine series will do is allow people to get on the platform so that they can actually feel like that they're producers more than consumers, that they're actual content creators rather than just hostage to whatever major expensive technology is coming down the line. So I'm very keen about that. I'm just going through some of the stuff that I was going to refer to. It's a different kind of film language. So when we usually think of this screen that I'm talking to you now, you know that there's a window around me. And you can turn away, ignore it and all the rest of it. But essentially, I'm just a flat 2D display. And what you have in films, for instance, on a big cinema screen is what's considered IFIX. When you're looking at big telly or, cinema, you're keeping your eyes on normally the character's eyeballs. So if I duck out and come back in again, you're probably looking at my eyeballs to see what I'm thinking. So here we have an example of Monsters, Inc. And a simple little cut, boom. Wherever the eye was on the screen, you're probably getting prepared for the next cut. So in 3D and wraparound and VR and so forth, a huge change of thinking is that you no longer have that level of control because the person can actually look behind them, up, down, and you're no longer the director. What this means in 3D film, for instance, and I won't play this clip now, is not only do you have control of where a person's looking on the screen, but you also have a control of the depth of how far into the screen they're looking. And again, we're starting to think of more complex ways. So I would be saying, before it gets all too heavy and technical, you have to just stop thinking of the screen and just think that you're there. You just actually have to position yourself and go, all right, I'm actually in situ. I'm actually there. So I thought I'd switch over to this current example. This video isn't publicly available, but if anyone wants to, I'll send them the link afterwards. Or if you have a spare screen right now, you might actually want to access it. There is the YouTube link. And what this is I've been doing a project with marketing. We've just been doing a trial. If you don't mind, I'll play to you. Are you all okay so far? Can you see everything? Yep, okay. So this is actually the CSU Wagga campus. I'll go full screen. Can you still see it? Yep. So I'll just move around and we'll see some of the people walking by. Whoop, bit of a stutter. But you can actually see the sky, or we've just cut to the Wagga campus there. And this is taking this promise of 360 and actually giving it a go. I think I'll actually be able to zoom out too. If you want vertigo, we can get some really broad views. I'll switch to some of the other scenes around here on campus. So the thing about 360 video is getting a camera that can actually do it. So the university has what's called a GoPro Omni, which is a 6-facing GoPros, and the real hell is stitching all that footage together, and we've got specialist software for that. More recently, I've just tried a camera called the Insta360 Pro. We don't own one, but we might be able to purchase one in the near future, where it's like this camera, but it can actually film in stereo. So if you actually put on 3D glasses, you'll actually get depth as well as just this flat picture. So I've currently gone around campus and got various things. So I've got still images of 360, so we can just upload and people can look at them in high resolution. And then we've got these 360 videos as well. The important thing to note about these examples that I'm showing is that they are still video. They're still flat. And at best, maybe I could get a left and a right channel to actually do perspective for the eyeballs. Where it gets interesting is where we actually get into virtual reality. So for that, I'll go back a little bit in time. Please excuse me as I go into some folders here. I hope I'm not boring anyone.
Definitely not.
Okay. So in 2001, I used to write for the DA and, you know, some other newspapers about where things are going to go. So I was really amazed that back then people played Doom and Quake and all those sort of things. And there was this little guy called Tim Sweeney working in a garage. You know, he was making this game so fanciful that everyone paid it out and called it vaporware. So he called it Unreal because people went, well, you must Photoshop those images. There's no way that's happening. And I bought it, and I was amazed to find that not only was it visually spectacular, but he was really generous. When I say he and the rest of his crew at Epic Games put the editor on the disc. I went, my God, you know what this is? This is a world builder. You don't actually have to know 3D Studio Max or Maya or various other programs, but this program would actually allow you to bring bits and pieces and drop them into a virtual world and play the game. Still very much game-based. So I have a color picture of it too. So yeah, it was kind of like, I've got to, you know, keep track of this. So in fact, Tim Clapdoor would have gone through the multimedia degree when we were probably experimenting with this. And Tim was obviously, you know, at the forefront of multimedia and design. So look where he is now. We're very lucky. So what we did was when we introduced the animation degree is we really took this seriously. And I'm going to show a video, or I could just provide the link. How about I just play a small clip of the video so we don't end up bored by it, where students were given this technology with their skills in traditional 2D, 3D linear animation and told, okay, why don't you build an environment, something that you can walk through? So I'll just play a little bit. I'm turning down the volume. I don't know if the volume's loud on your machines. Are you okay?
No,
Yep.
I'm not hearing the volume.
Oh, that's good. So this, yeah, in this particular case, Alice Markham loves Alice in Wonderland. So she went and made the models and the textures and she applied them into the virtual world. And this is actually walking around these virtual environments. I'll zip ahead to a few other examples. Just taking you to different worlds. Now, to do this, obviously these students just didn't come in and do 12 weeks. They actually had some subjects that led into how to actually, so basic 3D modeling classes and how to animate. So there was a bit of a pathway here. But I think it's really refreshing to know that we are actually doing this. So we're actually here at CSU and fully engaged with that. If anyone's been in our building before, the actual building 21, this is actually it. So this was one of our students, John Oldroyd, who actually went and measured the rooms and took photos of the walls and the carpet. And that's our animation studio, like, well, when it was like 2013. So when I was walked through that building, I was going, oh my God, you know, like what? Yeah, he was actually going to do his master's here too, but it wasn't long before he found employment. So where we're at with that is anyone now can go to download Unreal Engine and start creating. Now, if a person's new to 3D, they'll probably have no idea of how to, you know, 3D model and all the rest of it, but that's okay because they've got a marketplace. So even a person starting for the first time can actually go and get trees and buildings and start mapping them out. But this is really exciting stuff and it's free. That's something that's stunning as well. More recently, I've been working with Epic on a other program called Unreal Studio, which is architecture visualization. So imagine, if you will, that we're working with engineering in Bathurst and they've got a building design and you would like to walk through that building. Now, we've heard this 1,000 times before, but how close are we to it? Now, this is where my computer may break. So please forgive me for the next thing. It hasn't been tested before. Are any of you running Windows 10? If you are, you might be keen to type in and discover this little program called Mixed Reality. So here I have a model. And if this works, I should be able to go to Mixed Reality. You'll see me, hopefully there in the screen. And I might put that little dinosaur on my shoulder if I can. Or maybe my hand. It's going to be really hard to do this. It's kind of suggesting this is going to be really difficult. Maybe on this keychain. So I now have a dinosaur in my hand, which I can move around and play with. So that's built into Windows already. And I believe that Mac phones now have that ability with what's called ARKit. The next generation of Google phones will allow us to do this. So what we start doing is we combine what we know with animation, so 3D modeling, and we can now export it to Google phones, Android devices, Apple phones, Windows PC, Linux, various other platforms. That's all possible. But what is really interesting is to be able to project something onto an existing image. So that's the next step. I'll actually close that now. And hopefully just bring this down. Oh. So rather than me just open up another wild program, I'll just take a moment there to, sort of say where we're at right now with CSU. While I'm doing that, I'll find some recent work with Wasim. So Wasim Afzal in the School of Communication, in Information Studies, we worked on this project. Again, I'll digital prototype that breaks computer. So what we would do is maybe there's a lecturer who wants to spruik up a particular topic. We could record that lecturer in motion capture, that is full body capture. Facial performance, the same stuff that you see on Lord of the Rings, Gollum, and all those sort of, wonderful things. And we'll have a digital avatar. So once we have that performance of the motion capture and the facial capture and the voice recording, you can then switch bodies. You could, change clothing, hair, anything that you like. I'll zip ahead. And this is actually in the Unreal Engine. So I can then design if they're talking around a barbecue or if they're in a high-rise building. And this level of freedom is, I'll just back up a little bit here, can also be exported in all sorts of ways. So we've got our traditional 2D video. You'll see in a second here that we can do a 360 video. So you can actually look around. So it's still pre-recorded. You can do a stereo 360 video. So you get depth as well. Or you might just hold up your phone and project someone onto that surface. Or maybe you'll go past the library and you'll hold up your phone and you'll get to see an extension of it, or maybe a classic castle, or whatever you think is appropriate. Now, I have hundreds of videos, probably more than hundreds, maybe 1,000 videos of cutting edge VR where kids get to use their phones in classrooms to preview what a visit to the museum will look like. So a recent example from Alt Effects, I think it is, who did this, you would get kids to, look in the VR goggles and they're in the museum, but then the dinosaur they're looking at, which is an actual replica of what you see in the museum, then comes to life. And the kids get so excited, they're just like buzzing with energy. They might think, okay, well, they're going to be disappointed when they go to the museum and actually see that. The opposite. When they see that statue, they're so excited because they know what that represents and they know what that means. So yeah, we've got the business where we could actually showcase things like the campus, and that's good for people who want to become familiar with the spaces. And as of the past few weeks or so, Chris Orchard and Travis Holland have been successful with the School of Communication and Creative Industries in securing a grant for very expensive equipment to do what we call reality capture. And that is where you can go into a room like the one I'm in now and use a LiDAR scanner to not only measure it very accurately, but to get all the details and then recreate a 3D model. I think everyone's going to be very excited by that. So it's not only just having a 360 video. The difference is when you're dealing with VR is you can bob your head and you can move around and the actual world perspective will change. And there's different technologies like that with point clouds. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. So I'll go back here. This is how things have changed. QuickTime VR was pretty popular in the late 90s. And essentially it was just a picture where you just, have 6 sides of a cube. That's all that's happening there with those perspectives. More recently, it's a sphere. But once you start combining these technologies, extraordinary things can happen. So this, what you're looking at right now, is drone footage. It's actually my parents' house in Cootamundra, so I hope they don't mind being recorded. What you'll see down here is a 3D model built off that footage using a technique called photogrammetry. And the bottom right-hand side is the actual CG model. So that's the real footage. That's what's captured from just the photography, and that is the virtual model. So if I play, it's rather interesting what you can do. Now, let me just talk about one of the possibilities of this application of the technology. You have a hostage situation, you can fly over a property, people are unfamiliar with the layout, depending on where technology is at in a few years' time, it can rapidly reconstruct details of the model. You could have police officers with a VR headset actually get a sense on the ground of, where distances are or, how to navigate through things. And it's rather incredible. So there are various vendors fighting for the university money, trying to, get you to buy into their particular techniques. And this is the Nokia device. Essentially, it's like a spider with multiple eyeballs. So we could go get that camera. Look at it. It's so nice. It's called the Ozo. It can even hang from a drone. Really lovely. The price tag is 60,000 US dollars. Now, I don't know, that was a couple of years ago. It's probably gone down in price. Or maybe like the GoPro Omnis that we've got here at the university, you can no longer buy it. So here's the catch. I've shown you footage that's been recorded of CSU with GoPro Omnis, but if you go to their website, you can't buy it anymore. Such is the pace of change. So it's a really interesting discussion. I'm very keen to talk to people about what I think will be future-proofed and those things that are kind of in a sort of, transitory state. So, yeah, I could show more examples, but we've seen this all before. So here are some applications of VR goggles. I've actually been able to expand this video to include Videodrome and Screamers and other films, but yeah, I kind of want to make sure that when people talk about the VR and AR experience, that they don't get a bad impression, that they know that it's an evolving medium and that we are hopefully going to make some wise decisions as to how we introduce it. And I think that obviously starting with 360 video is a good start. Working with basic VR is also possible. The character digital animation is more advanced, but again, possible. And yeah, we can now get to the point where people can prototype stuff and actually see it on screen. So I think the future is coming a little bit faster than people may be anticipating. I have far more to show, but I figure if I stop talking for a bit and let someone else jump in, I could probably spend more time on any one of those particular topics.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.